Medieval armor is not just iron clothing, it is a highly sophisticated engineering system of its time. For a long while, popular culture suggested that a knight in armor was an immobile target. In reality, the finest examples of armor allowed a warrior not only to run, but to fence with astonishing speed. Today, we will break down in detail what the armor of different warrior classes consisted of. Let's begin with the very first layer, without which any subsequent protection would be useless. The foundation of any armor is the gambeson, or a thick quilted jacket. It was sewn from many layers of linen and tightly stuffed with wool, tow, or horsehair. The primary task of the gambeson was shock absorption. Without it, a steel plate would simply transfer the impact energy to the bones, injuring the wearer. Poor infantrymen and militiamen often used only this type of protection as their primary defense. The thick, multi-layered fabric could stop an arrow shot from a distance or soften a glancing blow. Even today, modern reenactors are amazed by the strength and reliability of a well-made gambeson. This was the base upon which the future combat power of the medieval knight was built.
The next crucial stage of evolution is the famous and recognizable chainmail. It consists of thousands of small iron rings intricately interwoven. Each such ring was usually riveted by hand, requiring months of painstaking and heavy labor. Mail provided the warrior with incredible flexibility and freedom of movement for that time. It offered ideal protection against sword slashes, making a person almost invulnerable to simple blade strikes. However, mail was quite heavy, and its considerable weight pressed solely on the warrior's shoulders. This is why knights began using wide leather belts to distribute the load at least slightly. The main enemy of mail rings was heavy blunt weapons and powerful war crossbows. A mace strike against the rings did not tear them, but the behind armor effect, blunt force trauma, was immense. Nevertheless, mail remained the primary and most reliable armor for many centuries. By the 13th century, it became clear that mail alone was no longer enough for the warrior. Thus, a transitional type of armor appeared, with the famous brigandine being its prominent representative. Outwardly, it resembled an ordinary vest covered with expensive fabric, velvet or leather. However, on the inside, steel plates were riveted to this fabric in an overlapping fashion. It was a brilliant design that successfully combined the mobility of mail with the rigid protection of plates. The brigandine was significantly cheaper than a solid breastplate and much easier to repair in the field. Simultaneously, separate protection for the warrior's limbs was actively developing. First, steel paulins, kneecaps, and couters, elbow guards, appeared to cover the most vulnerable joints. Later, craftsmen began covering the shins and forearms with separate anatomical sheets of metal. The military world was steadily and rapidly moving toward the image of the Iron Man.
The 15th century gave humanity the pinnacle of blacksmithing, full-plate armor. This was the so-called white armor, completely devoid of fabric covering and shining in the sun. Every minute detail here was perfectly fitted to the anatomy of the specific owner. The steel cuirass reliably protected the chest and back, featuring a special reinforcing ridge. This convex shape caused the tip of an enemy spear to slide off without harming the knight. The joints of the plates were covered by movable segments that worked on the principle of scales. The total weight of such a full set averaged about 25 kilograms. For a trained person, this was no heavier than the modern equipment of a firefighter or a special forces operative. The center of gravity in plate armor was distributed so intelligently that one could freely jump and dance in it. Piercing such monolithic protection was possible only with specialized weapons like a heavy poleaxe. This was a unique time when defensive technology temporarily triumphed over offensive techniques.